Please stand.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, behold where I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, we have already come. Was grace that brought the Savior's far, and grace will lead us Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now
You may be seated.
I see.
Well, we welcome you here today. You did not plan to get together like this, but this is part of this human existence stuff. We welcome you. When this service is over, we invite you, if you would like, to follow us in procession to Mount Hope. We'll have a short graveside committal there. If you don't want to, you're welcome to stay here. We'll come back and we'll go in the lunchroom and have food. We also want to welcome and thank those who have taken the time to watch us on live stream, wherever you're at, whatever part of the day you're marking out, to remember a life of Maury, someone you loved and cared for and has a piece of your existence interconnected. As we go through this service today, we'll read some scriptures, we'll hear some songs, we'll say some prayers. Big part of it will be memories and moments and stories, and sometimes in our interaction with each other, we just assume everybody knows our piece of the story, and we're puzzle pieces that connect together. So you'll hear some bits and pieces that maybe you go, oh, I never knew that before, or I remember that. And when we sit down and eat together, you'll be able to look across the table from each other and say, did you know this piece of life? And that helps us in this process as we grieve and walk through this part that we know is real, but we don't want to. One of the things I like about the Psalms is David, the psalmist, writes songs that deal with the raw stuff that he is dealing with right now. Some of his songs are songs of joy and celebration, and some are, I didn't sign up for this. This wasn't in the fine print when I was born. And one of those psalms is Psalm 23, and David captures a trust in God that sees all of this and understands the junk of our life, but also is honest about sometimes life is really good and sometimes, boy, it's just messed up. And some of it we really can't do anything about. And he says this, "The Lord, my Father God, is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters, and he restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou, God, art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runs over. And surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." If you remember it, you're welcome to recite with me the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. We heard Amazing Grace as we came in, and we're going to hear another song now and one toward the end. These songs were all chosen by the family. They have a special connection. So as we listen to this next song, On Eagle's Wings, I invite you to grab your Kleenex if you need to, take a deep breath, and we'll begin walking through this together.
You dwell in the shelter of the Lord, who abide in his shadow for life. Say to the Lord, my refuge, my rock, in whom I trust, and he will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, make you to shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand. The snare of the fowler will never capture you, and famine will bring you no fear.
Mike, I have your folder here. He told me it was 15 pages front and back, so we're going to make it. Come up and share.
Thank you for all being here, both here and watching from wherever you are. There's ribbons on a lot of these bouquets and flowers up here. Wife, mom, grandma, sister, sister-in-law, aunt, friend. And these were the most important things to mom. She loved being those things. There's a couple of things I want to do for mom, first of all, that I know she didn't get the chance to do. I want to say, Dad, Mom loved you so much. And I know you loved her too. I know it was hard for Mom to get the words I love you out because of all the emotion that always come with it. But everything she did for you and us was how she showed her love. You guys built such a great life together. I know there were some tough times, but as we've been talking the last couple of days, there were so many more great times. Brian, Mom is so proud of you. You're a great dad and a wonderful man. Having you and Jamie close to Mom and Dad these last couple of years has eased my mind. I know they can always count on you if they needed anything. Thank you for being there. And for everybody else, family and friends, she loved you all. I know Mom wasn't big on words, but she loved everybody so much. I got through the tough part. A little bit about Mom. Mom never did like to talk about her that much, so, and I wasn't the greatest listener, as good a listener as she was. She was always more concerned about what I had to say or about what her other family members had to say. I've heard a few stories about her childhood. Growing up on a farm in Waverly, she grew up knowing the importance of family and the value of hard work. She did tell me how she loved going to her grandparents' house in the summer and all the great memories she made there playing with her siblings and cousins. It was a very special place to her. And being able to go rock around a couple of years ago, who knew? But that was such a great moment for Mom and for everybody that's with her, and even for me to be there with her as she showed me her childhood and a lot of her memories at Grandma's place was great. It was great. I'm glad we did that. From what I heard, Mom's attitude showed early in her life. I think Mom was kind of feisty. I think Roz would probably know best. One story that sticks out is the time Grandma had to throw a whole bucket of cold water to stop one of her tantrums. And I don't know who threw the shoe or who ducked, but somehow a window was busted. And whatever punishment it was, Mom never forgot that one. Mom was a hard worker. I think you all knew that. I know. She'd go into work several times as early as 4 in the morning in all sorts of weather. You know, Mom wasn't big on words, but she led her actions. It was always, and she told me a couple times, her coworkers say if Maury could show up to work from 20 miles away, in the middle of a terrible snowstorm, then I better be there too. I felt she never gave herself enough credit for what she did for the company. As Roz said in her statements on Facebook this week, she made it through a lot of transitions and layoffs and changes through company, as we all have for 30 years. And there was a reason that she stayed through all of them. She didn't know anything. She outworked everybody. But along with work, Mom made so many friends through work over the years. Laurel, I know you're one of her special friends. Even in retirement, one of her favorite things to do was to go have lunch with the ladies from work. Mom was the only woman in a family of 4. I know that's not easy, Mom. But she was the toughest of us all. So, she would, yes, Mom, you were the shortest. She meant she would have to look up to look us all in the eye. But nobody messed with Mom. Whatever needed to be done around the house, picking eggs, cleaning gardens, shoveling snow, raking. I couldn't keep up with her. None of us could. She'd outwork us all. And then that's always a little motivation for me. If my mom can do it, so can I. Mom was so happy when Brian and I got married. Two great, lovely women. I know, I think it was even, I don't know if she's happier for us or for herself. She would finally have a woman's point of view at family events. I think the Franson came out in Mom when it came to competition. She could be a little ruthless. She has always been a competitive person. And these are memories that I'll come flooding back this week, but we played a lot of board games when I was young. I remember even Owatonna, Brian, you were a little bit younger, we would play Yahtzee. And we'd roll the dice on a towel so not to wake Brian up with the dice. But if that lady rolled Yahtzee, she'd wake up Brian and the rest of the neighborhood. And double Yahtzee lookout, everybody knew about it. And she taught me lessons at a very young age. There's a game of Monopoly, and I remember handing her my last dollar because I landed on one of her properties, and she had a smile on her face, and I was crying. We played a lot of rummy growing up on the farm, too. It's one of her favorite games to play. I'm sorry, Mom, but finally I finally beat her, and I stuck it to her really good. Well, our game of rummy quickly turned into 51-card pickup. We never did find that last card. Something else just popped in my head. Mom loved to bowl. It's been years since she's bowled, but that was a highlight. She enjoyed doing that. There again, there's a competition and being around people. I think Brian and I remember she always had a roll of quarters for us for the video arcade, but we enjoyed watching her bowl too. And later she passed on her bowling skills to Ella. I think one of the things that make a great parent is when is it the time to give a hug and when is it time to give a push. I think Mom was great at deciding when each was needed. Growing up, Mom was always telling me, you can do it and try harder, never give up. Mom was a great coach at home and always pushed Brian and I to do our best. But then when things would not go our way, Mom was always there to console us. She wasn't the biggest hugger, but she always made us feel better any way she could. Those hugs and pushes would continue through many more times in my life. I got one story in college. Going home on a winter day, it was kind of icy out, and yeah, I put the car in the ditch. It's just Albertley, only 10 miles away, but I bent the wheel. But thanks to Mom and Dad, got the tire fixed right away, but boy, that kind of freaked me out a little bit, and made me feeling a little bit sorry for myself and having a pity party. And I just told Mom, you know what, I think I'm just gonna stay home today. I'll call my professors, I'll get to class eventually. But that was one of the moments that I remember Mom pretty much giving me the toughen up, buttercup. And I know that was, yep, and the world's gotten so much better, and Mom knew that. And I made it to college that day just fine. But it's a lesson I never learned, never forgot. I know it may have been easier for Mom just to let me stay home that day, but it was one of those times where she needed to give a push. But even in college, the packages, the hugs would come in the forms of care packages. In all our conversations with Mom, and we talked a lot. I mean, we talked a lot, but she'd always know when maybe Mike needs a care package. So when those care packages would come unannounced, boy, yeah, she knew when I needed to be lifted a little bit. But that was one, you know, some of you all know this, but Mom kind of had a lead foot, and here's another story real quick that popped up in my head this week, but one of the trips back to college, moving back, we actually had two vehicles. Mom was in one vehicle, I had a bunch of my stuff, and I had the vehicle with a big old orange recliner sticking out the trunk. As our way through Mankato, of course, I was the one pulled over for speeding because I was a college kid with a chair in the back of his trunk and going way too fast for that college kid. However, I did not get a ticket. When the officer asked why I was driving so fast, I simply said, I was trying to keep up with my mom. And I was pointing down the road because she had pulled over too. Thanks, Mom. Mom was a great listener. My talks with Mom would only seem like minutes, but when the conversation ended, we'd been talking for hours. And from the stories I have heard, I was not the only one having those conversations with her. I was even surprised to hear that Jordan and Mason had made several calls to her recently, and yeah, she knew stuff I didn't know, thanks a lot. But she really appreciated those phone calls, guys. You guys will never know how much she appreciated those phone calls. And I know, I'd say 95% of the time I called, no matter what day, time, whatever it was, Mom would pick up. But those times that Mom did not pick up, I knew she was on the phone with Charlene. And I just want to say, Charlene, I know your relationship was much more than just sisters. And you were there for my mom a lot here. So, thank you for that. Yeah, and a lot of us called her from the road, and being a traveling salesman, there was a lot of that. But I just want to say thank goodness for cell phones and unlimited minutes. Even not on the phone, Mom would always take time to talk to someone that, especially in gatherings like this, or graduations, or weddings, whatever, if she saw someone that would look uncomfortable in the room, or no one was talking to them, Mom would make it a point to go over and talk to them. She wanted to make everybody in that room feel comfortable and welcome. I said, Mom loved to be home, but she did enjoy trips with family. We had several camping and fishing trips growing up. Mom was always a great organizer, making sure that we had everything for that camping trip or fishing trip we were going on. And we never packed enough rain gear. I always said that if there was a drought someplace, all we had to do was plan a Riley camping trip. It would rain 3 to 5 inches that night. Mom loved to go fishing with Dad. It was not always about catching fish, but building memories. How they survived some of those trips is amazing. I remember having that small orange boat in our trip to Waseca. Of course, Dad hooked into a big one. I think our family put on quite a show for all the surrounding boats trying to land that fish. 30 years later, I was in a different boat, but I witnessed Dad and Mom land another big fish. It was pretty entertaining. The only difference this time was instead of Brian trying to jump out of the boat to get away, Jordan was trying to jump out of the boat to try to get away. I think the favorite thing my dad enjoyed saying to Mom was, Maury, get the net. And Brian and I were talking last night, and just a quick note. Mom always made sure we had everything we needed, obviously, and almost everything that we wanted. And Dad, I mean, even to her, she bought Brian his first guitar, and these two things that we love. But she didn't realize how much practice time and noise she had to listen to with that guitar. And she bought me my first set of golf clubs, but she didn't realize how many golf balls I was going to need after that. For as great of a mom she was even a better grandma. There's nothing that she would not do for her grandkids. I remember as a kid getting the airplane rides on her feet as she would lay on the floor. But even more impressive, she gave the same airplane rides to my boys at a much older age. I was a little scared sometimes when Mom was doing them. But there would be nothing she wouldn't do. There would be nothing to do to stop Mom from putting a smile on your face. Mason, I thought it was a little odd your high school senior year to ask for that ride, but I don't know if I got this down the road, but she was so proud, and everybody in this room knows it too. But she was so proud of her grandkids. I just wanted to say that. I said, for 3 or 4 summers, we dropped the boys off with Grandpa and Grandma for 1 or 2 weeks, whatever it was that time. She'd spoil them with toys and way too many sweets. But the true treat for them was the time she would spend with them. To go pick them up after these visits was very tough. I felt like I was kidnapping my own kids to bring them back home after such a great time. Mom was finally blessed granddaughter Ella. She has a very, very special relationship with her. A lot of tea parties and a lot of Barbie. Mom would never say no when Ella asked, Grandma, you want to play Barbie? She never had a lot of practice raising 2 sons. But I think she was the best Barbie player ever. And large family with a wide range of ages for all her nieces and nephews. I think Mom filled that grandma role for a lot of you guys. Yeah, and in a lot of those talks that we'd have, Mom was talking and bragging about all her nieces and nephews. She was proud of all of you. Quick story, but Mom enjoyed rooting, and when I say rooting, I mean yelling for the Vikings. She even turned a guy that didn't watch football into a Vikings fan and cursed Brian and I for the rest of our lives to be a Vikings fan. I think one of her greatest things she did, she was able to bring both Holly and I and Brian and Jamie to some playoff games back in '98. I chose the first one because I knew that was going to be the easier one. And they did win that one. And Brian and Jamie went to the second one. We all know how that turned out. And if you want more details on that game, you're going to have to talk to Brian. But I do want to say Jamie still married Brian after that. Mom loved her pets, cats, and especially her pet dogs. She had a very hard time parting with Dakota and Sam and Jackson. Jackson was really, really tough on her. He was a good pal, and Dad was traveling quite a bit at that time, but so I know that was a tough moment in her life. And she said, after Jackson, I'm not getting another dog. And we all kind of knew. It'd be a little bit, but Mom would get another dog. And I always thought it'd be another golden retriever, because that's all we ever had. But along came Russ the dog. Her biggest thing, whenever she would describe Russ, was that he was a rescue dog. And for me, those two were meant so much for each other. I've never been so jealous of a dog in my life. And we've been getting a lot of questions how Russ is doing. That was one of the toughest things, watching him walk through the house here those first couple of days. But I am happy to report his tail was wagging when he got dropped off with Mick at the doggy daycare. I think of the time Mom and I spent gardening growing up. It was a special connection her and I had, and also with her mom. It connected us all. Mom always had a vegetable garden, and then she'd make for sure that she had her gladiolas, zinnias, and marigolds. Even then, just this past Mother's Day, Mom came back, and we made another trip to the greenhouse, even though I'd been over there 6 or 7 times already. I think Mom and I could spend hours going through that greenhouse, but thank goodness there was Dad to keep us down. Mom loved working on her yard. And that's the first thing I seen when I went home. The yard looks wonderful, Mom. That's one of your things to be proud of. She would spend hours on her lawnmower. If there was any lawn clippings showing, no, she'd have to rake all them up and get rid of those too. And after I get done mowing at my house, now I look out there and, good for you, Mom, I'm gonna leave them. But once a mom, always a mom. I don't care if your kid is 6 months old, 6 years old, 30 years old, 60 years old. Mom always would want to make sure that we're doing fine. Our last conversation was Mom calling me up after one of the recent bad storms. By the way, she hated storms. And that's Mom. She wanted to make sure Holly and I and the boys were okay and nothing was damaged. Mom gave 10,000 times more than she ever received or expected to receive. And even though it seems like she is gone, she's really not. I see my mom and her grandchildren. Jordan, with your big heart. Mason, with your competitiveness. And Ella, with the joy and happiness, and especially your smile. These have been the toughest days of my life. I have felt angry, sad. And during any other time like this in my life, Mom would be my first call. But the thing that has gotten me through these last couple days is still Mom. I hear her voice saying everything was going to be all right, and remind me that I have things to do, and I need to live life and go on. Mom, you'll always be with me until I'm gone.
Thank you. We get together like this, and if a life didn't matter this much, we wouldn't be so hurt, and our tears wouldn't be so real, and maybe our laughter wouldn't be so great. This humanity thing, as we get together, is we know this is us, and there are pieces of it that we don't want to happen. And we get all jumbled up. This morning, as I'm listening, as I'm watching who comes in, we have some great similarities and some great contrast, and we have an 8-week-old baby, and some of you have lived decades of 8 weeks, right? And we've got this wide range, and we're here at this moment trying to figure this stuff out. And in case you think we're not quite up to par, this has been going on since the beginning of history. And as long as there are humans, we will be struggling with life and what do we do when there's not life, and how do these pieces of someone we love so much live with us. And an ancient king called Solomon, who at his time was considered the wisest man who ever lived, people from all over the known universe would come and ask him for the meaning of life. No, he wasn't sitting on some high mountain, in a robe. But people would come from all over asking him what the meaning of life was, and he would try to explain things that they didn't know. And the man who was supposed to know pretty much anything there was to know about anything wrote some ideas down, and they're included in Scripture. And part of his life, the man who had accomplished everything, the man who could know everything, experience things that many of us would never be able to experience, came to the bottom line and said, I don't know what to do with this. In fact, it seems like he wrote a few verses of just the comparison and contrast of the ebbs and flows of life. And he writes, there's a time for everything. There's a season for every activity under heaven. There's a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and uproot, a time to kill and heal, to tear down and to build up, a time to weep like today, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to scatter stones, a time to pick them up again, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing or just push somebody. A time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep, a time to throw away, a time to tear, a time to mend, a time to be silent and to speak, to love and to hate, a time for war and peace. And if we sat around today, we could come up with a lot of comparisons and contrasts of just our own personal lives. We heard some great stories. Some of you cried, and some of them you laughed out loud. And it seems like we go through the routine of life, and especially as we are younger, we are sure that there's always tomorrow. And then we come to days like today and realize our life is this gift we've been given, but it's finite. Maury was born in 1952. There's a lot of life that has changed in those years. 49 years of marriage, 2 sons, 2 grandsons, a granddaughter, daughters-in-laws, sisters, brothers, have all these pieces of connections. Today we weep, but we've also laughed. And I find sometimes that's kind of ironic that in the deepest sorrow of our life, as our hearts are breaking apart, we have this peace in us that realizes that this isn't all there is, so we laugh and hang on to those things that make us smile. We mourn deeply, and today we will get to cry together, and today you will be able to sit around tables and share stories. But I think probably the hardest part is when all the hoopla is done and we go home and try to figure out the next step of life, and I can't just pick up the phone anymore, and it's quiet, and what do I do now? And we will go through those pieces of, I know I can do this, but I'm not quite sure how this works. And during those times, if you have a moment or a memory, or if you are struggling, there's still cell phones, and call someone and talk to them and say, do you remember? And we have these things that glue us together. As I listened to the stories, as I've tried to ask some questions, Maury was kind of the center point, the glue that kept you all connected. And that's a beautiful thing, a beautiful piece of legacy that you get to share, and now you get to figure out how to hold each other together. Maybe you can learn some lessons. Maybe there are new ways to make sure that the lessons she taught you get shared. It's a time to embrace. Today there'll be some hugs, and I'm glad you talked about embracing and then pushing away and suck it up, buttercup, and all this kind of stuff. Because sometimes we don't know where that line is, and it's great to have someone in our life that can model and say, this is how this should work. You probably weren't in a hugging mood playing Yahtzee. Those times when emotions were high and she was competitive, you knew she loved you, but she was going to win. It's a time to tear down and a time to mend, a time to plant. We have these seasons, and she was able to plant and fix her yard, and then there's winter. There's a time to be silent and a time to speak. And maybe in this case, we ought to add, there was also a time to yell from the stands and embarrass everybody. And as you're at games, as you're spending time out in life, and you hear another rambunctious grandma yelling. Maybe you just smile. We've been there, and hold those memories. A time to love. 49 years of life. 49 years of life is a lot of love and figure this out together. A time for war and a time for peace. Right now, the world seems upside down, and not only here, but if you pay attention to the news, we live in chaotic times. And then there's a time for peace. Hopefully in your life you have people that on purpose, when you're with them, bring peace. We get these moments and memories. Somebody needs to make sure somebody cheers for Ella in bowling. Somebody needs to make sure that those things that bind you together as a family and friends are connected. And we read the funeral folder, and on the front, there's a picture of a bird, one of her birds she likes, and there's a name, and then there's dates when she came into this world, and then there's a date just a few days ago when she was not in this world, and in between there's a short dash, and we'll go to the cemetery in just a few minutes, and you will see all sorts of headstones and markers, and they will have names, and some will have sayings, and some will have children's names or grandchildren's names, and some, the dates are really close together, and some are, how did they live that long? And all the commonality, in spite of all those different lives, is that almost little forgotten dash in between. And we have to figure out what we do with that time in between as we go through our routine, knowing that it won't last forever, but we don't want to think about what's next. What's that word that summarizes this life to you? I was sent a text the other night that Greg says that phrase for him is, I've always loved her. It doesn't quite encapsulate everything, but it does for him. There are moments and memories and pieces. And the headline of life for him was, I've always loved her. And you will have those things. And it probably won't be that simple. Our world tries to knock things down into Twitter language that's really short, and that's great, but that doesn't grab everything. And after this wise man wrote these words of, what do I do with life? And here's the ups and downs and the great peace, and here's the routines and the not so routines, and here's the stuff we really want to hang on to, and here's the stuff we don't want to think about, and here's the time when our hearts break, and here's the time when we laugh out loud, and here's the time when the world seems to be everything right, and we finally got our act together, and here's the other times. He says, but God has set eternity in our hearts. This isn't the end of our story. Today, as we've spent some time together, I hope the stories, I hope the scripture, I hope the prayers kind of help us walk through this. And when we're at a time like this, we're kind of disjointed because we're all kind of here for one purpose, but our emotions and our thoughts are in different places. But God has set eternity in our hearts. We're stuck in clocks and calendars. But He reminds us again and again, this isn't the end of our story. So what will we do with now? What will we do with the things that really matter? What are the things that are so important that we will never let go? Will we on purpose say, I love you more often, or hug more often, or be honest more often? the memories, the lessons that you took from Maury that are intertwined with you, how will we pass them on? As we've got this great age range here today, we're in this together at this spot. And God has not forgotten. And we are not alone. And you are deeply loved. And you have been deeply loved. And today we celebrate that deep connection and affection. Let's pray. Dear God, in spite of our tears, you knew this moment. And we do not understand many things you do, or why you do it, or a lot of times your timing. And today, we are here in grief because we will miss what we have loved. And our routines will be different. We maybe have ideas of how to work through this and take the next step. But we are human, and we don't always know the next step. So today, we remind ourselves that you are God and we don't have to be. And you tell us if we come to you, we don't have to clean up our act, we simply come to you, and you don't throw us away. When we come to you, you hold us and you take care of us. When we trust you, you get us through these moments. You are okay with our anger and our questions and our what ifs and our woulda, coulda, shouldas and our moments that make us smile and give us deep relief and our moments that don't. You understand the days that we forget that you are God and we don't have everything under control, and you understand the days when we are sure we don't have our act together. So today, with these family and friends, I ask that you would be close to us. Be with Greg as he starts this new piece of life. Give him help and courage. Be with Mike and Brian as they have to figure out how this next piece works and who to call on the phone. We ask that you would be with daughter-in-law and sister and brother and grandchildren and friends, as today we simply bring who we are to you. And in this moment of tears, in this moment of deep loss and love, we ask that you would help us as we walk together and simply trust you. We thank you for taking care of us. We thank you we don't have to be alone. We thank you that you are God and you know intimately the details of the very fiber core of our being, and you do not leave us by ourselves. We thank you for this. In your name, amen. Please listen to this song.
Tell me, what does it look like in heaven? Is it peaceful? Is it free like they say? Does the sun shine bright forever? Have your fears and your pain gone away? 'Cause here on earth it feels like everything gold is missing since you left. And here on earth you.